God in the Gospel of John. When Judas had gone out, Jesus said, "The human one has now been glorified, and God has been glorified in the human one. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify that everyone in God's self, and will glorify him immediately. Little children, I'm with you only a while longer. You will look for me, but just as I said to the Jewish leaders, I will also tell you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment. Love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, when you love one another." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you. Last weekend, Mike Pence delivered the commencement speech at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Now, Liberty is the largest nonprofit, private evangelical college. And here are a few other things that I found interesting about the university. The current president is Jerry Falwell Jr. It has an honor code called the Liberty Way, which prohibits premarital sex and private interactions between members of the opposite sex. It plays a prominent role in right-wing politics and has an endowment of $1.43 billion. And finally, it teaches creationism. A university. So FYI, my education at Island has been a little different. But back to the speech. Pence warned the graduates that they should be prepared to be shunned or ridiculed for defending the teachings of the Bible. Journalist Chuck Curry says, "Truth be told, it is Christians like Pence who do the most shunning and ridiculing." His message at Liberty was both bad theology and bad politics. See, the problem is Pence made victims of the graduates and himself and trivialized those who face genuine persecution for their faith. We need look no further than the Christian churches in Sri Lanka that were bombed on Easter morning, and the attacks on the Muslims in Christchurch, New Zealand, and the murder of Jewish people in the Tree of Life Temple in Pennsylvania. And I have a map here that David printed out this morning that shows actual incidences of violence in the United States. More than 3,500 incidences. This is actual persecution. Come look at this map later. In the first century, Christians actually were persecuted. At that time, the Roman Empire demanded worship of the emperor. A Christian could maintain their personal faith beliefs as long as they worshiped the emperor. Christians, however, were becoming unwilling to do so, and the authorities suspected that they posed a political threat. If they would not pledge allegiance, then they would be persecuted. They would be arrested, tortured, and put to death in incredibly cruel practices. Now, in facing persecution and these cruel practices, as you can imagine, some Christians agreed to worship the emperor. However, those that didn't were called martyrs. And in Greek, the word martyr actually means witness. They became heroes, witnesses, because of their faith and examples of how to imitate Christ. One such martyr was Perpetua. Her diary, The Passion of Perpetua and Felicity, the first surviving diary of a female in antiquity, tells of her final days. Now, Perpetua was just 22 years old. She was a new mom and a new Christian, and she and her friends were arrested because they refused to worship the emperor, and they were sentenced to die at the birthday games of the emperor's son. At first, they were imprisoned in a house, but eventually they were taken to an actual prison. Now, Perpetua's father visited her several times in both places, trying to persuade her to change her mind. The first time he visited, because she would not change her mind, he physically assaulted her. And the next time he visited, the guards beat him in front of Perpetua. And she still did not change her mind. And the final time, her father took her child, and Perpetua stood strong. Eventually, Perpetua and Felicity were led to the arena where they fought a fierce cow, an animal chosen to imitate their sex. Since the cow did not kill her, Perpetua took the gladiator's sword and put it at the spot on her neck that would kill her, and she was stabbed and died. Now, Perpetua's story is about both civil disobedience and her fight for religious freedom. There's much, much more about Perpetua's story, and I wish I could tell you all about her, but I don't have the time. But there are a couple of things that I would like you to keep in mind. Everything Perpetua did, she did because of God's love for her, which she translated into love for others. Perpetua wanted to imitate not just Jesus' death, but his life as well. And while she was in prison, she prayed for the guards. She prayed for those who persecuted her. She fought for better conditions for her and her fellow inmates. And she knew that her fight was against evil. And therefore, no matter what happened, she would win. And she had great compassion for her family and comforted them, even though they didn't agree with her. And Perpetua had visions, and these visions provided hope and peace to her and her friends. And finally, Perpetua was smart, and she used her source of power wisely. Now, while I don't believe that the white, privileged, heterosexual Christians from Liberty University are being persecuted, what I do believe is that there is a battle to maintain the human rights of all people and not be forced into a draconian society. LGBTQ are fighting to maintain marriage equality. Families on the border are fighting to stay together. And women, specifically women of color and women in low economic status, are in a battle to maintain reproductive rights. Like Perpetua fighting the Roman Empire for her rights and the rights of others, women today are fighting the government to maintain their right to decide how to proceed with pregnancy. Many may want to make this into a moral decision of right or wrong. And if the solution were binary, it would make the decision much easier. And a decision such as this isn't made any easier when a woman may not have access to prenatal care, might not have maternity leave, may not have health care to ensure the health of a child, and may not have the financial means to live above the poverty line. Yes, there is a war being waged. And Pastor Rebecca Todd Peters says that as progressive Christians, we must have progressive feminist language to fight this war and to trust women to answer the questions, for themselves. Here's something else I know. In today's lectionary text, the words Jesus spoke to his disciples was, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another." Now, most of the time we shorten this commandment down to love one another. And we leave off the "just as I have loved you" part. We skip right past that. But Jesus told his disciples to love as he did. And how's that? Jesus loved the woman who was caught in adultery. And Jesus loved the woman who anointed him with oil. And Jesus loved the woman who just needed to be healed. And Jesus loved the woman that mourned. Jesus loved the lepers and ate with sinners. Jesus loved and Jesus loves. And Jesus loves the woman who makes the difficult choice to terminate her pregnancy and is with her in her suffering. Of this I am sure. So what else can we learn about today's text from Perpetua? First, remember that everything that Perpetua did, she did because of God's love for her, which she translated into love and action for and on behalf of others. My prayer, as I preach my final sermon as an intern, is that you all know that you are loved by God. When Phil Campbell was here in March, he preached the same message. You are loved by God. And I said, "Phil, I was going to preach that message in May, and now I can't." And he said, "Terry, it is a message that can never be preached too many times." Wise words of wisdom from a sage. So once more, I hope that you all know how much you are loved by God. And feeling that love, I pray that you also translate that into love for each other. And here's an example of how to take God's love and transform it into love for others. This is from Vanessa Owen, one of our members. And she shared this post, which was written by another woman on Facebook. And it read, "Dear women, if you need a Colorado vacation, just PM me. No judgment, no questions, only support and compassion. Let me know when you're coming and I'll pick you up at the airport. I'll give you a peaceful place to escape where you'll be safe. I'll take you where you need to go, and I'll even hold your hand. You will be safe. We'll take some selfies in the mountains, chill out by a campfire, check out some cool art, for social media, for those new state border checks, just to prove you're all good. And you will be good. I'm here for you. And this is what it means to love each other as Jesus